I think we should get cracking. What do you think?
Go for it.
So good morning, everybody. My name's James Kidd, and I'm a partner at Mills & Reeve, and I'm joined by...
Yeah, my name's Becky Wilson, and I'm a business director at Pure in Norwich.
And between us, we are HR Energy, which is a collaboration where we work together to hopefully benefit local HR professionals. So I'm going to do housekeeping, and then Becky's going to do brief stuff about what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll get on with the session and you'll hear less from us, which is good news all round, right?
Yes.
You can hear some of the voices of our speakers who are very keen and eager to get cracking. So as you joined, hopefully you heard that this is being recorded. We have opened the chat and we have opened the Q&A. Do please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. This will hopefully be a really pertinent and engaging session. So to that end, you can ask us a question and we can pick it up, or if you want to say something in the chat that everybody else can see, that would be fantastic. We may or may not interrupt the speakers with your questions or your comments in the chat if at the right time, but we'll be mindful of how the session goes because we want to get you out by 11 o'clock. So it may be that we'll pick them up at the end. We may be that we'll pick them up separately, but if it's really pertinent and relevant, we'll try and deal with it at the right time. We'll be done by 11 o'clock. As you leave, there should be a feedback form. Please, please, please give us some love. Send us some nice comments. If you don't like it, then feel free not to say that. Becky.
Thank you. Yeah, and also any ideas of future topics that you'd like us to be talking about, find speakers for, or anything you'd find helpful, do let us know on that. But yeah, today's session, I'm delighted to be joined by two of my colleagues and also Diana from Marshalls. And we felt it's a really prevalent time at the moment to be talking around recruitment and talent. I think everybody we're speaking to at the moment is struggling to find the right talent for their organisations. And it's the hopeful little quick wins and the tips that we can hopefully give you guys today that just might help you in your recruitment processes. So I won't talk too much because I don't want to steal Caroline and Ben and Diana's thunder. But like Ben said, please do engage with us, do ask questions, and please, anything you've got around recruitment and talent that our three specialists here can help you, that's what we're here to do. So without further ado, I mean, thank you to the three of you for agreeing to do this in the first place. But yeah, I'll introduce you to my colleague Caroline and Ben, who are going to start the presentation. So over to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Becky, and thank you, James, for inviting us today. I'm just going to just share my screen with you, so give me 2 seconds. Hopefully this will work okay. Okay, what can you see? Let's just do... Okay, are we okay? Can we see everything? Yeah, great. Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us along to talk to you today. We're going to be talking about recruitment, all things recruitment, talent acquisition and onboarding. So just a quick introduction about myself. I'm Ben. So I'm a director at Pure Resourcing. I've been with the company 20 years this summer, so quite a long time. I've started my recruitment career working for a large PLC back in the day, which was about 24 years ago. And then I was one of the sort of founders of Pure in the early days when we set the company up. I'm also a qualified coach and I'm an HR recruiter. I also volunteer for quite a number of charities. I work for Age UK, and I also advise on a mental health charity, Illuminate, which I'm really passionate about. And also there's a picture of me there with my daughter. She is a fur baby and she's my rescue hound. And I've had her for about 9 years and I got her from a charity. Above me and on the slide is Ben. So Ben and I are both, as I said, directors at Pure. I've worked with Ben for a number of years and also Becky. And Ben is also an HR recruiter, but he also oversees our Essex market and our top Chelmsford area at Pure. He is doing the London Marathon this year, which is really exciting. So we'll be cheering him on to do that. He said he's a keen runner, but he's a little bit slow, but I definitely think he'll be able to do it. And he's a dad with 2 sports mad kids. So, okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the current market, okay?
Caroline, you might want to change your display settings because otherwise we can all see your next slide in your notes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How do I do that?
Go up to display settings.
Oh, hang on.
Top top left.
Top left, yeah.
That's it, in there.
So swap presenter view.
Yes.
Is that better?
That's
Yeah.
better.
Oh, thank goodness, you can see all my notes then.
That's why I thought I'd interject.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Thank you. Okay, so where are all the candidates? That's the big question that we're all thinking about at the moment. As we all know, we have gone through a really turbulent time over the last couple of years. We've obviously coming out the other side of the pandemic. We've obviously gone through Brexit. So for us, particularly at Pure Resourcing, I would say it was probably March 2020 when we really saw the market come back to life. Not 2020, 2021 last year. And at that point, recruitment just literally went through the roof, and not just for us from an agency perspective, but obviously for every client that we were working with. So job vacancies are obviously at a record high. 9 in 10 businesses are saying that labour shortages are their biggest concern. It seems to be what keeps CEOs up at night at the moment, worrying about where they're going to find their talent and where they're going to find people. It is a super competitive marketplace. Particularly where we work, where I work in Cambridge, you know, it used to be that you couldn't find a software developer for love or money. However, it now feels like you can't find anyone in any sector for love or money. So everyone is looking for talent, and everyone's looking for obviously people to join their organisations to help them deliver their services and their products. And the other thing is there is so much choice for candidates. There's multiple roles. When I'm talking to candidates at the moment, you know, you'll do a briefing call with them and you'll say, have you got anything else on the go at the moment? And they'll say, well, yeah, I'm already in 3 stages or 3 processes with 3 other organisations. So that is obviously very challenging, particularly as we're all looking for similar kind of people. So lots of choice out there, very, very competitive, all, you know, record high in terms of vacancies. What we're seeing in terms of recruitment trends, what the pandemic did do, it did create us an environment where we could virtually interview people, which is great. And that was a real positive, which meant it was quicker, it had lower costs attached to it, and it was much more convenient. People didn't have to take time off work to book holiday to go for job interviews. They could do a job interview before work, they could do it in their lunch break. So I think from that side, for me, that was a real positive. The pandemic also opened up a world of hybrid and flexible working, which obviously then has had a knock-on effect to why people are perhaps not looking for work as well right now, because my view is that a lot of organisations have given you that flexibility that you were so craving, and you've got it. So I think that has had an impact on maybe why people are not looking perhaps as much as they were before the pandemic. They can walk the dog before work. They can walk their dog in their lunch break. They can do some hoovering in their lunch break. You know, they can pick up their kids. And also we've probably moved much more towards a culture which isn't 9 to 5. You know, it's where you do your best work. And if you do your best work from 6 till 9 p.m. at night, and you work for an organisation that trusts you and empowers you to do that, that's okay. Hybrid working has obviously opened up a bigger talent pool. But what I'm finding, and I'll talk to Ben and Diana about this, is that a lot of my organisations now are saying, we do want you to come into the office at least 2 or 3 days a week, whereas during the pandemic, it was fully remote. So again, it's a bit of a challenge around trying to make sure people still live within a radius of your office to get them to come in. We've noticed counter offers have increased more and more. If you are a great employee, I am going to do everything I can to keep you. I may get a job offer for a candidate, and then, you know, 2 days, 3 days later, they'll come back and say, oh, you know, my boss doesn't want me to go. They've offered me more money. They're giving me more flexibility. They're giving me opportunities to hoover at lunchtime or whatever it is. And so we are noticing that more and more. I mentioned obviously candidate shortages at the moment, which again, I think links back to this piece around being given more flexibility, and also people worrying about job security. The other thing we've noticed is that when we are advertising roles, we've seen a decrease in the number of people applying for job adverts. So we are having to spend much more time searching for people via sources like LinkedIn, via job boards. So it's become a much more of a search versus job applicant advertised market as well. And the other thing that for me, I've noticed really in the last 6 months to a year, candidates want to work for organisations that have a strategy towards the environment, sustainability. They want to work for organisations that care about charity and giving back, also that have good values, that have a wellbeing strategy, that really care about the mental well-being of their people, and also the organisations that are really looking to attract a diverse range of talent and that are focused in equality and inclusion. So again, these questions are being asked of me when I'm obviously briefing candidates on jobs. They'll say to me, you know, what's their leadership like? You know, what sort of values do they have? Do they care about their people? You know, it's much more about working for organisations that have a purpose as well. And I appreciate that's not every candidate and that's not every organisation, but I'm noticing these conversations happening a lot more. And salaries have increased. So, and we've noticed that in the last 2 years as well. So I'm going to hand you over to Ben, who's going to talk about the candidate experience.
Thanks, Caroline. So clearly from what we've heard so far, and from probably what we read about every day, it's hard to recruit at the moment. Yet some organisations are much more successful than others. So how are they doing it? Candidate experience. This is key when recruiting. It's key in any market, but especially right now. First impressions count. And what do I mean by that? The first impression that a candidate may ever have with your organisation is through the recruitment process. You need to make sure it's a positive one from the first interaction right the way through to onboarding them and getting them to join your company. Organisations that attract the best candidates are the ones that provide a great experience throughout the process, even to candidates who are not successful. Get the basics right. If it's too difficult to apply, people won't do it. In the vast majority of cases, we're no longer operating a funnel model where we're trying to take a large volume of skilled candidates and narrow them down to the best 1%. Most organisations are keen to talk to any candidates with key skills and experience for their sector. So take a minute to ask yourselves, how easy is it to apply for a role within your organisation? And can you make it simpler? Communication. This is key. Candidates expect prompt and frequent communication throughout the recruitment process. Some research we did recently said that candidates consider this level of communication a majorly positive factor when applying for a role. And the opposite is a major turn-off and a key contributor to people declining roles or dropping out of the process. According to a recent Recruitment and Employment Confederation survey, 2/3 of candidates expect a mobile-friendly candidate experience, whether this is being able to search or apply for jobs on their mobile through to receiving updates on their application via text. It's also worth considering that text messaging on average has a response rate that is 8 times faster than an email, and it's quicker and easier to reach applicants. The other key thing to think about with communication is, as an organisation, does all of your hiring population understand the need for the speed of response? Regular touch points. This will keep candidates engaged in the process and make them feel valued. It's key when they're interviewing for a number of roles. Feedback. This is not a new thing. The biggest complaint and frustration that we hear from candidates is a lack of feedback, which is pretty criminal, really, considering some of these individuals have been for a second or maybe even a third interview with an organisation. Taking the time to deliver prompt and constructive feedback is essential. I genuinely feel that as an organisation, you really are duty bound to try and provide people that have invested time and effort into applying for a role in your organisation some feedback that might help them with their career search for the future. Sharing and trying to let candidates experience your culture. Giving candidates the opportunity to see what it'd be like to work for your organisation can be a real benefit. The ways in which you might be able to do this is look at your career pages. Are they interactive? Is there any video content? Is there a day in the life of John in accounts? Is there a number of videos of why so-and-so likes working with your organisation? Video clip from the CEO, the MD, what's it all about working there? Could it be a chance to meet the team as part of the interview process? And also, if the role does involve working in your office or your site as part of it, have you invited that individual to come down and see it, show them around, see the environment, see what's being made or what services you're providing? Do you have a culture book? This could be an extension from an employee handbook or a book. We've got one that is all about what it's like working at Pure and is a really strong snapshot to get individuals to understand your culture, the experience of what it's like working there. Very happy to share that. Social media. I mean, whether you love or hate social media, it is a seriously powerful tool, not only for candidate attraction for the good, but it does also provide a voice for frustrated job seekers. With Glassdoor, Indeed, and goodness knows what other platforms are popping up every day, it's really easy for individuals to share their candidate experience. So if they've had a really positive experience with your organization or a really negative one, they can share that with a wide audience very quickly. And that negative experience can have a awful effect on your organization and its ability to attract talent. Moving on to looking at adverts and job descriptions, the first point at which you may get noticed as a potential employer is your advert. And if you take one thing from today, take this: an advert and a job description are two different things. That sounds really obvious, but the amount of organizations that we work with that pretty much put their job description up there and expect it to attract candidates, it won't. An advert needs to be like any other form of advertising, a means of attracting somebody or creating an interest in the role, the organization, or the culture. If it fails to grab the target audience's attention, then they won't apply. And all of the effort that we put into the next stages will be wasted. So take a step back. Who are you trying to attract for this role? Why would someone want this role? Why would they want to come and work for your organization? Think about that rather than the gap that you're trying to fill within your business. Think about the language that you're using in your advertising. Is it inclusive? Could certain groups of people be put off by the language that you use? Do you need to change it? Try and make your role stand out from the crowd. Why work for you? What are the benefits? What's the culture like? Why is the role interesting? What are the development opportunities? And what are the unique selling points of your organization? So if you've attracted somebody through to the advert, then's the opportunity to show them that job description. Again, this should be a clear, concise document, easy to read and appealing. The JD should have more detail than the advert, should outline the key duties and also the skills and experience required to fulfill it. What it doesn't need to do is list every single thing you might be expected to do over the next 10 years within that organization. I would recommend no more than 1 page of A4 for a job description, but certainly no more than 2. Nothing is more off-putting for potential candidates than a 4-page job description and the 2 pages of essential requirements. When devising a job description with a hiring manager, rather than rehashing a current JD, take the opportunity to strip things right back. What are the key things that we need for this role? What's essential and what could we train? So if you've got your advert and your job description right and you're attracting a strong pool of candidates, then you need to make sure you don't lose them along the way. Caroline's now just going to talk you through the interview process.
Before we do that, can I ask a question? Which is, how do you two stand on the advertise the role with expected salary or without salary? I know it's a fairly contentious point. So, like your views.
From our perspective, if we don't advertise with a salary, the response rate is an awful lot lower. I think for an organisation, I think sometimes there's a lot of sensitivity around advertising that salary with the current employees, etc., etc. I think for an organisation like ourselves, if we don't brand adverts with an employer's name, it's a lot easier to be able to go out to the market with a salary on there. I think there's a lot of suspicion of not having salaries, and people tend to assume it's because they're low rather than because they're high. And also it can waste an awful lot of time. You know, roles at all levels can have very varying kind of salary scales. So, you know, if somebody's on 60k and looking for that and above, and a similar job title's paying 40, and you don't get to know that right the way through to the end of the process, it can be a lot of time wasting for everybody. Yeah, Caroline, I don't know if you've got any views.
Yeah, no, I agree with Ben actually. I think sometimes the challenge for us is that a client might say to us, "Oh, please don't advertise the salary." We do hear that because they're worried about internal parity, and particularly if somebody in the organisation sees the job advert And then we've had issues in the past where someone's come back and said, actually, that looks like it's our company, that's a job in our, and then suddenly the salary is really transparent. But I agree with Ben that for me, if I advertise a role, say for an HR business partner, that could be more senior than a manager. It could be equivalent to a director. So if you don't put a salary on it, you're going to get a lot of people apply that actually will say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on 120K. And I'm like, okay, that's probably not the right job. So it's really important that we have, I think for me, salaries are advertised.
I would agree. And I think the honesty there, but there's the LinkedIn point, which is not as in, linked point, not LinkedIn point, which is that if that's going to cause pay parity issues with your organisation, then why are you advertising at that role and what's going on? Yeah, but there's,
I think we've also seen there's been some articles on LinkedIn and in some of the industry pages that when candidates, so at the moment we are obviously trying to attract those candidates out there, and I think when people look at a job advert, they look at the three main things: the job title, the location, and the salary. So it's understanding how organizations feel about pay parity, but is that then starting a whole conversation within the organization when you start your recruitment process around pay parity anyway? So it's opening up another can of worms, but that's what's driving candidates in the market at the moment. So organizations are missing a trick if they're not transparent with everything.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Back to you, Caroline.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about the interview itself. So I think the interview is, again, another opportunity to really sell the organisation. And I think Ben and I probably use the word sell quite a lot because we come from a recruitment background, but it is about selling the business, the culture, and what it's really like to work there. So the interview is a conversation in its most basic term, and it's not an interrogation. I had a recent example of a candidate who'd come out of an interview and she called me with her feedback and she said, oh my God, I had 40 questions just fired at me this morning in the space of about an hour. Well, having that many questions to answer in the space of an hour probably for her felt more like an interrogation than an interview. And an interview is really about a good, solid conversation where both parties get to engage and talk to each other. And at the beginning of that process, it's about building rapport, and it's about making that person feel comfortable. So you see the best version of that person. I had another situation quite a few years ago where I interviewed a candidate, and it was for an internal interview for us at Pure. And the person was quite quiet and they were quite reserved, and you could see they were visibly quite nervous. But I noticed on their CV that they said that they like ballroom dancing. So I kind of stopped talking about work stuff and I asked them about their hobbies. And I saw this person change and they just came to life. And what that taught me was that if someone's feeling a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe they're a bit nervous, they haven't had an interview for 30 years or something like that, it's my job as the interviewer to make that person feel relaxed, because you will see a different side to them. So, the rapport building piece is really important. Ask them things about what they are passionate about, not just at work, but also outside of work. The other key thing is, be prepared. Make sure you've actually read their CV. Again, I've had feedback which said, I don't think they read my CV. It doesn't sound like they read it, or they asked me any questions which are pertinent or relevant to that. And also think about the questions that you're going to ask. So going into the interview from the side of the interviewer, being prepared like we would prepare the candidate, we also need to be prepared ourselves, not just flying by the seat of your pants 5 minutes. Oh my God, Brian's coming in for an interview. Better do the interview now quickly. Haven't read the CV, haven't thought about what I'm going to ask. Is that going to be a good experience? Probably not. Also have a bit of a structure to your interview if you can. I like to set the scene, tell the candidate what I'm going to ask them, to sort of talk about what we're going to talk about, and make sure as I'm interviewing, I like to write notes as well, as long as I'm going along. And they might just be like a spider diagram of words, but then it refers me to come back to something that I want to delve a bit deeper into. The other question is really around, how are our managers trained to interview? Have they had interview training? Because again, sometimes it's not their fault, they just don't know how to do it. So again, it's our job really from an HR perspective to make sure that we are training people. Sorry, my slide just slipped then. The other thing is about listening, really listening, so active listening to what they're saying before we're jumping in to ask a question, and also appreciating difference. and not rushing to conclusions as well. Don't make up your mind about someone in the first 5 minutes. Give them, it is a marathon. It's not a race when it comes to an interview. We want to see that person come to life. We want to see them flourish. And they might flourish in 30 minutes in. Maybe they won't in the first 5, but we need to give them that opportunity as well. I'm just going to touch quickly on unconscious bias. I'm not an expert in this, by the way, but I just wanted to bring it up because it is something, again, that I hear when I am taking a job brief. Sometimes I hear my clients say, oh, I want another Barbara, or I want another Brian. And I'm like, okay, tell me about that. What does that mean? And that's okay if you mean we want someone who's got those skills. But if I'm looking for somebody who looks like Barbara or is the same sex as Brian, it's just being aware of that, really. And what does that actually mean? So to me, unconscious bias is when we unintentionally favour someone because we believe sometimes they're like us, or we think less of them because they're different to us. For example of this, could be because of their age, their sex, their race, or their religion. Doing this, it means we could inadvertently miss out on a great candidate. So again, I think it's just something to be aware of. And I think it's something to think about in terms of unconscious bias training for recruitment for managers, because we can be guilty of it without even realizing that we're doing it. I think about if you're trying to attract females into engineering roles, and if females only ever see your job advertising and your branding and your culture as being very, let's say, male, they might think, I don't have a place in this organization. Is there a career path here for me? So, but just thinking about what that means to you and your organization. The benefits of tackling it, of course, are that we know that it increases revenue. We know it has higher levels of productivity. And we also know it improves employee engagement. And it attracts such a brilliant, diverse talent pool. And that links back to your recruitment strategy, because actually people are wanting to work for organizations where they have representation. So I'm just going to hand you over. Oh, no, it's me. Sorry. It's not Ben. It's me again. Sorry. I'm just going to talk quickly about interview questions. This, again, is an opportunity to make sure that you've got the right person. Interviews can take many shapes and sizes and different forms. It can just be a talk through the CV. It can be a biographical account of your experience. However, it is quite common still for organizations to do a competency-based interview where we are really delving deeper into that person's thinking and what makes them tick and why they did what they did. So again, we prepare candidates to have a behavioral interview, and I always prepare them really with the STAR model, which is a competency-based interview, to get them to really give strong examples of what they've done and how they did them. So I always think about, what did you do? So what was the brief? How did you do it? What did you do? And then what was the outcome and what feedback did you get? And you really get a deeper example from that as well. I'm going to hand you back over to Ben now, and he's going to talk about the offer and onboarding.
Okay, great. Thanks, Caroline. So you found that great candidate. You've got them in with the advert. They like the job description. You've done a really good interview. They're really engaged. This is the one that you want. Let's get the offer right, okay? You want to bring this person on board. And of course, there's often room for negotiation in this area, particularly depending on the level. But getting it right first time can have such a positive message and really start the engagement of your new employee off on the right note. You want someone to be engaged, flattered, feeling positive and keen to take your offer, not disappointed, surprised, or worst case, as we've had, offended by the offer. All right. You can't offer everyone at the top of the banding, and I appreciate that, and that every £1,000, £2,000 saved on salaries all adds up. But if that role is key to your business and that role being sat empty costs money, then getting that offer wrong may mean that you're going back to the drawing board. And what's the cost of not having someone in post and the investment of time of going through the whole thing all over again? Also, getting the offer right isn't always about money. If someone needs flexibility and they've been clear about that from the start, then make sure you take that into consideration with your offer. When giving your offer, make sure you include all of the elements. What's the holiday entitlement? What's the pension? What are the hours? How flexible are you? Is it hybrid working? Is there a healthcare? Is there a bonus? Is there study support? Anything that you might want to know about when joining, the chances are that somebody else will want to know about that as well. Had a couple of kind of really good and bad examples of getting offers right. Recently, I had a candidate interview for a role. The role was paying 30 to 35k, and that candidate was on 28k. She told that business that she was looking for ideally a minimum of 30, preferably 32, and a bit of flexibility, as it was a little bit further away. They offered at the top end of the bracket. They offered a 35k. They felt her experience was great. She answered the questions brilliantly. They felt she'd fit in well with the team, and they wanted her on board. She wanted to drop her daughter off to school 2 days a week, more if she could. They said you can drop your daughter off every day of the week, but if there is a business meeting that you need to go to, then you just need to make allowances around that. She accepted, over the moon, really positive experience. The other end of the scale, we were working with the business, promoted their accountant role as paying 38 to 45k. The individual going forward for the role was earning 40k plus a bonus. So he said he'd be looking for minimum of 42, ideally 44 to move forward for this role. The FD in her infinite wisdom offered him 40k because it was closer to home, so he wouldn't have so much travel. So it was effectively a pay rise anyway. He should be grateful, really. Surprisingly, he declined, and 48 hours later, after the fact that they wouldn't budge and they definitely had no more room in their budget, they then offered him the 44k. But he wasn't interested by that point. The negative impact of getting that offer wrong and the way it was delivered just changed his whole view of working for that organization. So if you've got that offer right, I'll just quickly go through some onboarding stuff. You've made that offer, candidates accepted. There's often 1 to 3 months then from them saying yes to them actually joining your business. So a lot can happen in that time, and it's critical that you keep in touch with your new hire throughout that period. Make sure that the offer letter is sent out quickly, it's correct, it's got all the information on it, and also it requests back all of the information that you need. I know different sectors need a lot more compliance, reference checks, things like that. Make sure you request that early. Check in with them when they've resigned. How are they feeling about that? Have they been counter-offered? Try and arrange to meet them for a drink or lunch, particularly if it's a 3-month notice period. Meeting them halfway through that process just to check in, maybe meet the team, can be really, really powerful. If appropriate, include them in any social activities leading up to their start. Does the team go out on a quiz night once a month? Would that be a good thing for them to do? And is there anything you can send them prior to them starting? So can they see their induction? Is there a handbook for them to look at? Is there a welcome note? Kind of small gifts can go a long way. And I'm not talking about, a fancy watch. I'm talking about just, we send out cookies to people that are starting with us the week before they start, just to say welcome. And the feedback on that is worth more than quadruple what the cookies cost. They literally cost very little. And then just practical things. Has their equipment been ordered? One of the biggest delays in start dates we see at the moment is the turnaround time for IT equipment and someone forgetting to order it. Does the person coming in know who they need to speak to when they start? Do they have a work buddy? What are the plans for their first day? What are the timings? What time do you want them to start? These things are really important to somebody changing jobs. Changing jobs is a big deal. Make sure you keep them up to date with any new company information. And if they can have access to your intranet before they start, great. It's all about keeping people engaged and included before they start. And then on that first day, making sure that everyone within your organization ensures that they have a positive and well thought out induction and that time is booked in with key stakeholders. People need to be made to feel welcome and not feel like an inconvenience.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Caroline. Really appreciate that. Whilst you take your slides down, Caroline, and Diana puts her slides up, just to say we had some really good comments and engagement. Thank you very much. We're going to take a rain check, and what we'll do is if we have time after Diana has completed hers session, we'll pick up some of the questions and the comments in the chat then, if that's all right with everybody. And at this point, I should say, Caroline, other makes of vacuum cleaner are available. It's not just Hoover. Okay. Right, Diana, are you ready to go? Hit share screen.
I think so. I am just trying to get this to share. Is my screen on there?
Yeah, just go bottom right, share screen.
Hang on 1 second. I'm just going to stop sharing and go back to the main screen. It worked a moment ago.
This is where we fill, Becky. Tell us a joke. Okay.
So, is that working for you?
Yeah, but you just need to, yeah,
That's
brilliant.
it. Perfect.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you. That was the bit that I was really worried about. Firstly, thank you everyone for having me today. It's really flattering to be asked, actually. So really appreciate to be here and working with Pure and Mills and Reeve on this one. So yeah, thanks for having me on board. So my name's Diana. I am one of the recruitment business partners at Marshall. I've been with the business for about 3 years now, and we have just undergone quite a significant rebrand of our organisation. So these are all new slide decks, we've got new logos, we've got new colours. So if you do know us as a business from previous, it will all look and feel quite different now, which is really exciting, because as I go through and talk a bit more, touching on Marshall, but the recruitment process and what we do, one of the big themes I have is around the narrative, the story, the employee value proposition. And our new brand is really significant. So we've got some really exciting stuff to go on, good foundation. In terms of the Marshall business, and again, I'm not going to spend a long time going through this, but it's just to put into context what we do and what we're about. We were founded in 1909. We are still owned by the Marshall family, although we are very much run by the executive leadership. And we have 7 different business areas all shown on this slide. And you could look at those and you could think, how does a property business coincide with a land systems business? Like, how do they connect? Marshall are full of extraordinary stories. Everything tells a tale. It's all coincidental, it's all opportunistic, but what it's done is led us to a very multi-dimensional, complex matrix organisation, but all with a similar or the same purpose and goals, which we've identified going forward. Now, what we've identified, and appreciate this slide's quite busy, but what I want to point out is building extraordinary futures. So as an organisation, our purpose is to build extraordinary futures for our customers, communities, planet, which I know that was touched on the sustainability side, but mostly as well our people. Now, when you start to then think about extraordinary futures for our people from an employee value proposition, and I'm not saying that we are there yet, we are working through it, but getting our employees to talk about their extraordinary journey with us. What has your extraordinary career been like, and what can candidates get from an extraordinary career at Marshall? So it just starts to get thinking about what that narrative could look like, what our employee value proposition could be about. So it's a really exciting time to pull all of that together. But one of the key relationships that I have personally within the recruitment side is absolutely with our marketing and communications team. Those experts who sit in that field with marketing, comms, social, know what good looks like, can put things together in a really good way. And luckily I support that function for all of their recruitment. So we've done lots of work together to really sort of build this story, build this narrative. So in terms of me, I have been in recruitment for 16 years now. Majority of that has been on the consultancy side, and actually working for a while as a direct competitor of Caroline with another unnamed agency, but a few of you might know me from there. I class myself as a bit of a storyteller. And what I mean by that is I feel people learn from story from a very young age, all the way through to us now. People tell a story, it really brings and makes things come to life, and you can make that relevant to you in any way. With this in mind, and when I put my recruitment hat on, recruitment is about storytelling. I am telling our candidates about the story of the organisation. Their CVs tell a story, and the next paragraph, the next chapter needs to make sense. So again, you know, even on the recruitment side in a company, it's trying to help support candidates in really understanding that, showing their achievements, recognising what the next piece is going to be about. I'm passionate about wellbeing. I've done a lot of wellbeing. Part of my role, you know, is well-being within Marshall, and to really normalise that conversation. The candidate experience, and Ben, you talked a lot about this, the candidate experience is absolutely key. We only have one job to offer, but we can ensure every candidate can come away and have value from the experience that they've had, especially if they start to get into interview stages. You want them to, if someone says to them, you know, oh, I want to apply for a job at Marshall, and if they've been unsuccessful, you want that person to say, I went for a job there, I was really upset, I didn't get the role. However, the experience was amazing, and if something came up again, I'd absolutely apply. And we have got control of that. We can control that, even if we've only got one role. I'm incredibly nervous at events like these, but I do think you should always do something that scares yourself a little bit. And he's asleep down next to me at the moment, but I'm a fur mum of a beautiful golden retriever, Jasper. I've got a beautiful daughter, Felicity, who is my biggest challenge yet biggest achievement. And my favourite subject is food, and my guilty pleasure is watching reality TV shows, which generally are about food as well. But obviously we're talking recruitment today, so I'll move back onto topic. So I've kind of thought about this, of how to break it down, and for me it's about creating the ultimate stakeholder experience in recruitment. And when I say stakeholder, I mean internal and external stakeholders. Everyone we encounter are stakeholders. In recruitment, we have so many stakeholders, all wanting different things from us, being a candidate for a role, a manager needing staff within their organisations. They've all got different agendas.
I've just lost sound for Diana. Is anybody else?
Yeah, I've lost sound as well.
We've lost you, Diana.
You haven't accidentally hit mute, have you? Yeah, thank you. Everybody else has lost sound as well. I'd love to fill, but it might be difficult because I can't channel my inner Diana. Oh, this is it's going well. What we'll do while Diana fixes that, and keep trying, Diana, maybe leave and come back in again, is I'll ask Caroline and Ben some of the questions. Is that all right? Okay, cool. So Anonymous says, what strategies do you employ or are aware of to engage more directly with specific communities or underrepresented groups to promote more attraction to your organisation? So how do you reach the other parts?
Okay, I'm happily trying to answer that. I think what we're going through at the moment at Pure is that we actually brought somebody in to help us with our diversity and our inclusion, and that's.
Am I back on now?
Oh, you're back. Yeah.
You're back.
Lovely. It just said it wasn't working, and then I've just sort of clicked it and unclicked it, but no idea how that's happened.
Right,
okay, let me try and go back and share the screen.
All right. Is your answer, Caro, very quick?
Yeah, it's very quick. It's just basically what I'm saying is we've just invested in some training, and we've brought someone in to help us with that, and also the way that we sort of train our managers on how to interview, but also how to look at our branding, the language that we use, and also how we advertise. So I can share some of that as well afterwards, if people with some information, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Right, Diana, back to you. Cheers.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully we won't have any more problems. So an example of managing the expectation, we recently had some recruitment for a health and safety role. It was a pretty straightforward role, health and safety coordinator. It was a 12-month maternity cover, and it was the second time the hiring manager recruited this position. The first time was 3 years ago. And she doesn't recruit often, and she called me up and said, last time it was amazing, we had so many candidates, it was such an amazing market, we were spoilt for choice, we want to pay X amount, and yeah, go, we're expecting the same thing again. And we had to be very clear to say that's not going to happen now. And managing that expectation from the start, we can move quickly, we can do a quick process, but actually you're not going to see 30, 40 CVs for this role now, and you're not going to get as many candidates coming in for interview. And realistically, we're not looking at quantity, we're looking at the quality of what we're getting coming through as well. So don't suddenly feel you need to interview more people just to get the comparison. If that person's right, let's move forward with that person. But we really had to look down into the salary, because she was paying a little too little for what the market needed and for what the role contained. So in the end, we upped the salary, but we made the role a bit broader. So we didn't go like for like anymore. We could identify other areas in the business that could utilize the additional level of experience that we were bringing in. So it worked really well. But from her expectation of maybe interviewing 10 people, it was actually she interviewed about 3 and only 1 came in for a face-to-face interview. I'll talk a bit more about the interview going forward, but it's very much managing that expectation, looking at that job. At Marshall, we have people who've worked for us for 20, 30 years. My 3 years, I'm a mere baby in the Marshall culture. That's long services is a really big thing for us. So some of the job descriptions that I look at are a little hybrid. They're a little mix of quite a few different roles, and we need to home in on what we actually are looking for, what the market's going to give us as well, and supporting those managers, being very realistic, but managing also the expectation and kind of going full circle around to the candidate. So from the initial conversations with the candidate, they know what the process is going to be like and they know what to expect. So for me, this is key: collaboration, communication, manage the expectations, no surprises and no chasing, because they already know how things are coming on. Consider your channels and your adverts. So this is some big work that I'm personally looking at the moment. Like I say, fortunate to work with our marketing and comms team. If you do the same thing, you'll get the same results. So if you're not getting the candidates coming through from the channels you've got, then that's not going to change unless you change something with those channels. So taking a bit of time to consider your channels and your adverts. So some work we're doing at the moment, I'm working with a set group in the business on their LinkedIn profiles. Our LinkedIn profile, you tend to have social groups on LinkedIn that similar. My LinkedIn is full of recruitment and HR. That's the majority of it. And if I'm recruiting for one of our finance team, their LinkedIn are going to be full of finance professionals. So I'm working with people in that business to get them to support us a little bit in sourcing candidates. Let's use your LinkedIn. Will you share these roles for us? Let's tag you in. So that's helping as well, just to kind of lift level of application, but just to give us more awareness in the market to be in that particular area. Your advert, again, Ben, you did talk about this. It's not a shopping list of requirements and wish lists. A challenge I've done recently on one which was must have a degree. Well, why must they have a degree? Because if we're saying must have a degree, then some candidates are only going to apply for that role if they have a degree. But actually, you're now telling me, well, if they've got the relevant experience, then the degree doesn't really matter. So why are we putting must have a degree then on the job advert? A stat that I looked at recently is around females need to see the role about 100% as a match for them to actually apply for the position. A man might look at it and apply at 60-65%. So if we've got this wish list and we're asking for things that don't really matter, we could be turning away candidates that actually could be amazing for our role. So keeping that spec simple, broad, keep a big open net, because it's better to be able to say to somebody, this isn't right, but thank you for applying, than not get them at all. And actually building pipeline for other candidates. So you might, in your adverts, you might attract people who might not be right now, but could be right in 6 months' time, a year's time. You know, within your business, the workforce plan, what might be happening. So sort of keeping in mind those candidates coming through, and sort of utilising that for some form of pipeline, I always think is a really good approach. When it comes to reviewing the applications, this has been quite an eye-opener for me moving internally. Some of our managers, they must have a crystal ball, because they can read a CV and seem to know everything about the candidate from that CV and build this amazing assumptive picture of that candidate. We're not always, we're never recruiting for a CV writer. So sometimes the CVs might not be the best CV, but guess what? Some of those CVs that look beautiful may not have been written by that candidate either. So we need to review these CVs with a really open mindset. If there's enough on there, then we should be inviting them in for interview, or at least from a recruitment perspective, I will have a conversation with them. We had a situation very recently for a very senior role, it's a program director role. And we had a CV come through from somebody whose sector experience was spot on. The job titles looked great, but they had done the thing of not putting much of a profile on and just bullet pointing a few key tasks in what they'd done. And it was a bit of a turn off for all of us, really. It wasn't a great CV. And you could argue that at that level, they should be able to put something good together. But we aren't in a buoyant candidate market at the moment. So actually, it was worth a conversation. It was worth picking up the phone. And actually, Teams interviews are really convenient. So I think you can start to forgive a few things not being as perfect anymore. So anyway, called this candidate and we had a really good chat. And I broached his CV with him, and he was really honest, and he hadn't really had to look for a job before in this way. It was the same CV format he'd used for about 15 years and just quickly added a bit on the top because he was really keen to apply for the role. But he absolutely took on board what I said. This was on Thursday, and then on the Monday I had a brand new CV in my inbox. We actually arranged the Teams interview when we were on the call on Thursday, but he'd redone his CV over the weekend with just a lovely comment to say, whatever happens now, I feel in a much better, more confident place moving forward in my job search. So from a recruitment perspective and from Marshall, we've offered the candidate value, and that's, you know, if we can give him the job, brilliant. So he's still in process, we're still interviewing, but hopefully, you know, that goes somewhere. But again, just worth that time, just worth that conversation. The interview process has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. Who'd have thought we'd be interviewing on a screen? But it's been brilliant. It's been the best thing that could have come out of the situation because we can move through recruitment really quickly. The first point of contact a candidate will receive from Marshall will be a call with myself or someone else in the team. That contact is key because I want to understand the drivers of that candidate. Why are they leaving? Why are they wanting a new role? Let's be really transparent. Coming back to the salary question, it's a big debate at Marshall. I want to advertise salary. We're a unionised environment and we've got a workforce of over 2,000. So it makes it very, very complicated. So what we're trying to do is let's show our other benefits, but it's a hot topic of conversation because we actually pay well. So it would be good to highlight that. But in our transparent conversations with the candidate, we find out that salary. What are they looking for? What's the flexibility look like for them? What does good look like? Why are they leaving? Can they do the job? Do we think they sound like a good fit? We'll then move them on to a Teams interview. And echoing back to Caroline, these Teams interviews need to have a little bit of structure because the majority of your communication style is non-verbal, and it can really throw you if you have a Teams technical issue. You can't read the room, you can't make eye contact. So having a bit of structure in those Teams interviews is really important. The other thing that I will also do is check the capability and the confidence of the manager when it comes to interview. And just like we're not looking for a CV writer for our company, we're not looking for somebody who is expert on interviewing. So the STAR method that we use which is a great way to answer a question, I'll tell the candidate about that method at the beginning of the interview or when I'm arranging that interview with them, because actually it's just going to help them prepare and get into the right mindset to tell their story and articulate what they want to do. Another thing I also offer all of the candidates is to contact me after the interview. If there's anything you think, I should have said this, I didn't mention that, I've got a much better example than the one I gave, or I've got some questions to ask. We had a scenario with a marketing role, this was about 18 months ago, and we'd had a great response for this position, and we interviewed a candidate who was okay, not as good as some of the other candidates. She was okay, but hadn't answered a couple of the questions well enough to get her into the next stage in our mind at that point. I had an email from her the next morning at 3 a.m. She couldn't sleep. She wanted to take me up on the offer of sort of contacting me if she thinks of something she'd like to add. And she broke down a beautiful example on email at the end saying, I feel much better now that I can give that to you and now I can go to sleep. With that email, she did get another interview. We did ask her to come back again. She wasn't successful for the role, but it encouraged that contact, because an hour on the screen, it's impossible to get everything over that you need to. So offering a way for a candidate to be able to contact you, to come back to you, I think is a really added value. And then when they do come into the interview, when they do come to me, which we do want people to do, because that's how we really get to know people, that should be an occasion. We don't do loads of face-to-face interviews anymore, but when people do come in, it is more of occasion. Now we're open up, and we took a very cautious view over COVID, so we weren't really able to do site tours. But now we are opening up. We'll take them around the site, we'll go for a coffee, they'll meet a few key stakeholders, have some more conversations. So they're with us for an hour and a half, 2 hours, as opposed to an hour in a meeting room and then going home. So again, the candidate experience is really key there. And the other thing, and I'll touch on this very quickly, I'm conscious of time, is when you're looking at your psychometric tests, make them be valuable, make them have value. Sometimes when you look at these numerical reasoning and verbal reasoning tests, and you've got these timers up in the corner that are counting down, it's really stressful, and they're not that great. I can't do them. And do they really add good value to your business? Because actually, if they're not adding that value, it could detract a candidate. So think about those tests. Do they really matter? Are they going to add, give the best candidate experience? And the offer management side, I'll just sort of touch on one more point, because I know you've already gone into that quite a lot, but those key points of contact are very important. And we've recently recruited a head of who should have been on 3 months notice period. He was due to start a new role in 2 weeks' time when I contacted him on LinkedIn, and they hadn't been in contact with him for about 2 months. And they'd moved the goalpost slightly, and no one had been in communication. We were able to move a recruitment process so quickly that he joined us on 2 weeks' notice, and obviously politely let the other organisation down. But candidates have to do the right thing for them. And at that point in time, he didn't feel the value from them. So, I mean, there's just a few kind of things from us. There's probably more I could talk to, but like I said, I'm conscious of time. But the feedback part, again, if anyone spends that time with you and actually has invested time in preparing for interview, coming in, seeing you, having a conversation, any feedback, any value you can give to them, so they walk away from your business and say, that was a great experience, I think's really key. So that's it. I'm trying to keep it in my time frame. Like I say, there's probably lots more I could talk about, but if you have anything you'd like to ask me, or feel free to connect, there are my details.
Brilliant. Thank you, Di. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Caroline and Ben. I have to say that the piece you said, Di, it's so prevalent at the minute. Organisations are going through so much effort in the recruitment process, and then fall down at that last hurdle about the whole onboarding process. Yeah. And out of all of this, the one encouragement I give to everybody on this webinar is, you've done all this work, you've got the perfect candidate, they're due to join you. Please, just, I don't mean to sound like teaching you to suck eggs, but it's so important that when you've engaged that person, they almost feel part of your team before they've even joined you.
We've started looking at sending out our sort of Champions Health app, which is our wellbeing program that we offer to all employees. So actually, if we can send out Champions Health, so they can start to engage in that in a notice period, and have touch points, have coffees with the manager, but really putting the accountability on the manager to say, these are your team, you need to be in contact with them. But coming back to that initial drivers conversation, you understand what the drivers are of the candidate to move. If it's not a money related one, and they're saying, actually, we've been offered more money to stay, well, you didn't tell us that was your driver. It was because you didn't have the career path that you wanted, and this offers you that. Because it is so hard to hand in your notice. It's so hard to say to an employer, I'm going now, that we need, I think from the new business they're going to side, and I know you would all do it amazingly from the consultancy side, it's just helping coach them through that, really helping them remember their drivers of why they were moving, why they're leaving, because we are seeing more counter offers coming through as well. So that part there, and then that value going all the way through until they're onboarding.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Di. Yeah, as I said, I'm mindful of time. James, did you want to cover off some of the questions, or?
I prefer that we finished off on time, and thank you everyone for the questions, but we haven't been able to cover them. If we if they weren't anonymous, we'll pick up with you. If it's anonymous, that's a bit harder.
Yeah, we'll come back to you on an email or get in contact with you. Yeah. But no, thank you, Diana, thank you, Caro, thank you, Ben. I hope all of you logged on to the webinar today. Thank you for your time, for spending the hour with us. If you've got any questions, please, do get in contact with all of us. We're happy to share any tips and tricks in this current recruitment market. And thank you for all the lovely messages. Lovely to see you all, and thank you for joining us. We will be back in June on a webinar. Subjects and details will follow in the next few weeks. And then hopefully at some point we will try and meet in person. So watch this space. But as I said, any questions, please do get in contact, and we hope to speak to you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
All right.
Thank you very much.
See you all.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.